Thank the Lord for artificial lighting. There would be no way that I could film this video today without artificial lights. Today I wanted to talk about something that's quite important to me, and that is reading. I love reading. I have done for as long as I can remember. It's kind of sad how these days a lot of people don't like reading, or they think it's not cool or whatever. I've never understood that. I never understand why someone can dislike going on a journey and being taken to a different world without even having to move. One of the nicest things about it as well is that there are so many different books out there. Sometimes it can be a little overwhelming where to begin, but here are a few of my favourite books, ones that I've really enjoyed reading and really got into. No, that's not working. That's not working. So the first books that I wanted to talk about are the Harry Potter books. I have all 7 of them here next to me. I did try and hold them all up in one go, but that's not happening because they are huge. The Harry Potter books are probably the most sold books worldwide. I know they've sold at least 500 million copies. 500 million. Do you know how many that is? But honestly, the reason they're so well selling is because they're so good. 7 of them all together. I have read all of them several times. I love the way that these are written. The stories are so good. J.K. Rowling is the person who wrote them, if you don't know that already. She got turned down by loads of publishers before someone finally decided, yes, that will be a good story, that will make us some money. And I bet all those other publishers are kicking themselves in the face because this has got to be the best-selling series of books worldwide. For those of you who haven't read them, what are you doing with your life? But I'll give you a quick rundown anyway. The story follows a boy called Harry, and he is a wizard, and it goes about his life fighting evil in the wizarding world. I actually started reading these from a recommendation from my cousin. I was 6 when we picked up the first one, and because I was quite young, my dad used to read them to me before I went to bed. He read sort of a couple of chapters or so every single night, and then by the time the last one came out, I don't know how old I was, but we bought this one as soon as it came out. We read all of them together until we got to this one. We got nearly all the way through, but I think it was about 3 chapters towards the end, and then there were a few nights when my dad couldn't be back to put me to bed. Bearing in mind this time I was probably like 11? No, I have no idea. I could read by myself, is what I'm saying, and I read the last 3 chapters without my dad because I needed to know what happened at the end, and I just couldn't wait. There are 8 films, which I know are also really successful, but the books are fantastic. I used to like reading them a lot before I had sort of big essays coming up, and this is a bit weird. I found that I always used better vocabulary and I sounded more coherent, and what I was writing sounded a bit more fancy after I read those books. Don't ask me how or why, don't know how it works, but I always found that I spoke better after reading them, so definitely worth doing. If you haven't done already, you need to before you die, and you will love them, I promise. The next book I want to talk about is this one. I know a couple of years ago there was major hype about The Fault in Our Stars, and that's because John Green is such a good author. Everything he writes is beautiful. This book in particular, without sort of giving any spoilers to people who might not have read it, is about cancer patients, but it's not written in a way that kind of makes you want to feel sorry for them. It explores a love story at the end of the day, but it does it with this beautifully tragic kind of way that it's written. It's really philosophical as well, and I love books that like that. Books that really make you think and make you appreciate your own life and what's going on in it. This is such a good book. If you haven't read it yet, definitely do, because this one I know I'll definitely read more than a few times in my lifetime because it's a beautifully written story. The next one is this one. It is called The Night Circus, and it's written by Erin Morgenstern, and this one's a little bit different from your average sort of popular book, so you might not have heard of this one before. As I mentioned, I'm a massive fan of anything sort of deep and philosophical and just written beautifully. This is another one exactly like it. I'll read you the blurb of it here. That's not the blurb. In 1886, a mysterious travelling circus becomes an international sensation. Only open at night, constructed entirely of black and white, Le Cirque de Rêves delights all who wonder its circular paths and warm themselves before its bonfire. Although there are acrobats, fortune tellers and contortionists, the Circus of Dreams is no conventional spectacle. Some tents contain clouds, some ice. The circus seems almost to cast a spell over its aficionados, who call themselves the rêveurs, the dreamers. At the heart of the story is a tangled relationship between two young magicians, Celia, the enchanter's daughter, and Marco, the sorcerer's apprentice. At the behest of their shadowy masters, they find themselves locked in a deadly contest, forced to test the very limits of the imagination and their love. The circus in this book sounds absolutely magical, and if anyone were to be able to create even something marginally like it, I think it would be amazing. It's such a beautiful book, it's written really well. The chronology of the book jumps around a little bit between past, present, future, but it has got headers at the top of each chapter that tells you what time frame it's in. There are several different strands throughout the story that follows different characters, but as long as you're keeping an eye on the chapter headings, you can really piece together the stories of the different characters that eventually intertwine and all become one, and it is a lovely book. I've really enjoyed this one. I've read it several times as well. The cover I fell in love with. It's black, it's white, it's got a tiny little red feature here. All the pages are black as well. It's a little bit more fantasy, but I love fantasy because, I mean, who wants to read a book about everyday life when you live everyday life anyway? So definitely this one. As you can see, it's a little bit torn and that makes me sad, but it's a well-loved book. This book I actually discovered from it being on one of my friend's bedside tables, and I thought it looked quite interesting then. I picked it up, read the blurb, was intrigued, and the thing that really prompted me to read it was the fact that they brought out a motion picture film, and I wanted to read the book before the film came out, because everybody knows that the books are always better than the films. It's called The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. So I'll read you the blurb of this one as well. Here is a small fact. You are going to die. 1939, Nazi Germany. The country is holding its breath. Death has never been busier. Liesel, a 9-year-old girl, is living with a foster family on Himmel Street. Her parents have been taken away to a concentration camp. Liesel steals books. This is her story and the story of all the inhabitants of the street when a bomb begins to fall. Some important information. This novel is narrated by Death. It's a small story about a girl, an accordionist, some fanatical Germans, a Jewish fist fighter, and quite a lot of thievery. Another thing you should know, Death will visit the book thief 3 times. It's written by Death. Not a lot happens in this book, but I love the fact that it's narrated by Death. It just adds a really chilling tone to the whole thing. Beautifully written again. I love things that are well written. It makes me feel a sense of satisfaction getting to read a book that is written so well, and I really appreciate anything like that as an English student. I love words. Fantastic. Well done, Marcus Zusak. Love it. Okay, so I've got 2 books left. The second to last one is this one. It's called Perfume and it's written by Patrick Suskind? Not sure how it's pronounced, but it's called Perfume, the story of a murderer. Now, I saw the ending of a film quite a while ago. I must have been about 10, maybe. Saw the ending of a film. It kind of stuck with me because it was such a weird and kind of slightly disturbing ending, especially for a 10-year-old. I couldn't remember what the film was, but then I saw this book while on holiday in Turkey, and it really drew my eye because of the cover. It's sort of a really beautiful cover. It's black, it's got foliage and leaves and flowers, which are all seen to be quite pretty things, but in between it all there are laced some quite macabre pictures. So there's a skull, you've got a strange fruit cut in half there, there's a pair of ornate scissors at the bottom, and there's a red ribbon around it, so it all looks quite ominous to start with, but also quite beautiful and dark. It's quite a difficult book to read. Some of the language in it's quite archaic, doesn't all make sense. There are some big words that I didn't really know what they meant, but the story is quite chilling. It's about a man who has an incredible sense of smell. He can pick out the individual ingredients in a perfume. Anyone who encountered him in his life and had anything to do with him, any interactions, they always ended badly. He ended badly as well. It's a bit of a strange one, but at the same time I really liked it. Really enjoyed reading it. So if you're into a little bit of a more dark kind of books, do push on with it though, because it is a more difficult book to read. And then the very last book is this one, The DaVinci Code, written by Dan Brown. I love Dan Brown's books. They're all sort of mystery books. While you're reading them, you try and work out the mystery before it happens. And the film I was slightly disappointed with, particularly the ending. But the book, top notch. It follows a character called Robert Langdon, and he solves mysteries, murders. It's all to do with codes and riddles and things like that, and I love anything like that, trying to work things out. So this one I really enjoyed. It took me a while to get into it. From my personal experience, I think it felt like they were in the museum at the start forever, but that was probably more to how often I read it rather than how long they were actually in the museum. But once it gets going, they go on sort of a journey around Paris, and it is a really good book to read. It's quite gripping. You want to find out what happens, you want to try and work out what's going on before it unveils, and I was thoroughly entertained by it all. It was one of those ones that you have to keep reading and keep reading. You want something a little bit more adult literature, but not with adult themes, if you get me. There's no romance in this, I don't think. Is there? If there is, it isn't a main thing. The main thing isn't romance. So this one's definitely worth doing if you wanted something a little bit away from that. I think that is everything. This is not an exhaustive list of my favourite books because there are so many. If you guys have got any suggestions about books you think I might want to read, or your favourite books that you think deserve sharing, let me know in the comments below, because I would love to read anything that you've really enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you've read any of the books, what you think about them. Let me know if you are going to read the books after watching this video, and I will see you again next week. Bye!